Welcome back, everybody, to The Creative Moment, Season 6, Episode 5. Halfway through Episode 6 already.
Season 6.
Season 6, Episode 5.
Right.
I think I said that.
No, you said halfway through the episode.
Okay. It's been a long week. I got home at 12:30 last night after spending the whole week in Omaha. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's a new episode.
New episode.
Dante Boar, Jamie Bullhauer, writer, photographer, both very much involved in creativity, very much involved in our everyday lives. And this is what that podcast is about. So here we are. Let's go ahead and open up. I feel like this is the first summer episode, if you want to check out that tan line. First summer episode, you got Blood Orange. They had a 6-pack at Coach's Corner of the Watermelon Lime. So
there you go.
So, but
Yeah.
today we are talking about, should you redo or revisit your old work? Basically, the stuff that you kind of put, not in the graveyard, but in the archives. You don't really
that's
touch
actually published.
Yeah. Like,
You know, sorry. So, obviously, movie landscape, reboots, live action versus cartoon, different stuff. Like, we have this, they'll even, music, they'll redo a mix and have a guest person on, like a rapper or something. So we see this a lot. But should you actually mess...
Yeah, should
once
you
you
re-edit
actually
that photo,
created something?
Okay, so I want to hear your thoughts first. I have thoughts, and ours...
You have a
ours
different
cross
world.
paths a little bit, but there are some very stark differences. For example, it's a lot, I think, easier to re-edit a photo than it is to kind of rewrite a poem with the same kind of structure theme. So what are your...
Well, and so part of what we'll get to is what's the purpose of your creation. But so obviously there in pop culture, and I'm a big pop culture person, even in my classroom, references and showing how the stuff we talk about, intro type, So like one of my favorite movies is Over the Hedge. Great satire about modern living, but they never have made a second one. It's actually a comic strip. It had been a comic strip for a long time, and I don't get to every day, but I keep read the comic strip on and stuff, but they never messed with it. No sequel or anything. And Megamind, this is what actually spurred it. There's going to be a second Megamind.
And now a fourth Despicable Me.
But Megamind, I thought, stood so well too because that was it. Yeah. That was the story. And so now they're going, and I understand it's a continuation of the story. I'm just setting up the question because then we got the live action aspect, like Beauty and the Beast, another favorite movie of mine, and then they made the live action. Okay, words. Anyway, so. And I do know that there are poets, and there are famous poets, I'm not going to get, that have some works that they feel are never finished. And so one poet I know has the same poem in like 3 collections, but it's different. It's different. It's reworked a little bit. And so it's an interesting phenomenon. And I have to be honest too. I actually have a couple of poems that I have it's on the same Google Doc or Word doc or whatever, and I've got it like in my kind of freestyle, but then I have it also in a classic form or maybe 2, and like I don't know which one to actually like bring out into the world with that. And as you get older and things along that line, like I want to say this a little bit differently. So my hard answer is that no, you should not redo work. Because now, and here I go, we're going like, in a sense, once you've taken it to the public realm. Once, as you're working it, as like this one poem for sure that like the doc is like 4 pages long, and because I have not put that out into the world yet. I've not decided which version of that. But I think if I go back and rework something, it changes what was captured emotionally, creatively. Okay. I've been running around all morning. Yeah, it's early, not early Saturday morning. Anyway. And does that mean, though, you create a new version of it? Which, honestly,
is it the same piece of work once you change it?
So, and then that's what, like, because if you go live, and Disney, no offense, Disney, so many live action versions of classic stuff, and they have to change some things, and I don't know, it feels kind of uncreative in doing that. Like, here's the story, here's the capture of the moment, historically even, and things like that. And just because it's kind of like my poem, I haven't decided because it's not in public yet. It's not, so I've not decided which version this will be, but I can't go back and rework something and change maybe a new form per se or some. I don't know. My hard answer with the soft change is no.
Interesting. So I am kind of a mixed bag on this as well. I think it depends on the purpose of going back and redoing it. So the one aspect is sometimes I'll go back and just like look at my old work and I'll notice things that I know would have made the photo or the video better. Things that I just learned along the way after that video or whatever went live, went to the public. There's also the deadline aspect where I'm like, oh, if only I had more time, I could have done this and all that. But I agree in the sense that I think it changes what the work showcased in that moment and the emotion that it conveyed. It just doesn't really feel like it's the same piece of art to me. So like, for example, this Teton's photo sitting right there. There are things that I know now that I wish I could have edited with it, whatever, maybe made it better. But I don't really, I already printed it. I don't really want to go reprint it and do it again because then I feel like, okay, well, that's not really the same. It's the same photo, but it's not the same edit. And so I agree that once it hits that public part, once you hit publish, I think that is, however much you like it or hate it, that's your final product. And if you decide to do a reboot or a re-edit or whatever, it's a different product entirely. And so I don't really feel the need to be like, oh, here's some re-edits of this, that, and the other thing, because it does, like, once it's published, I'm like, that's what I published. That's my work, whether I was perfectly happy with it or not. And so I think it's okay to go back and redo stuff just to kind of see your progress or see maybe some tips that you learned that, oh, now I can implement this into my landscape shots or my seniors or whatever. But I feel like repurposing a body of work and then republishing it just doesn't really hit. It's just not something that I really look at as a creative venture that I really care to go down that path of. I re-editing a photo is a little different. Sometimes I'll leave a photo, and again, this before it hits publish. I'll leave a photo. I'll be like, I don't know how to edit this. I'm struggling. Give it 10 minutes, come back to it, and I'll have kind of a fresh idea on it. And sometimes I do that when I publish stuff too, and I'll be like, oh, I should have edited it this way. But it's out there. And so...
Yeah, so part of the then is like, when do you know... Okay, so in your case, you have deadlines. So in a sense, it's done. because it's done, like in the deadline. But other creative aspects, like even your photo edit, like in that case, or even trying to go back and recapturing that, like at another time in your life, or like when you don't have a deadline, when do you know that it's actually done?
Yeah, and that's a balance that is really hard to strike. And in a roundabout way, 2% I'm grateful for deadlines because you have but like those yellows, all my travel stuff doesn't have a deadline. It's kind of a deadline I put on myself because I'm like, oh, people know I was in Yellowstone, I got to post them because they won't care in a month. But it is a balance and a line that you have to walk of, okay, the longer I sit on this, the more I can improve on it. But at what point do I say this is good enough? And that sounds kind of derogatory towards the body of work, but at the same time, at some point, we've talked about one of the purposes of creating is to publish your work and to share it with others. So for me, it's just more of, it's kind of like a subconscious standard. I'm like, okay, this feels like Dante Bullhauer's work. And that's when I feel okay hitting publish. Maybe I'll go back the next day, before, like I'll sit on it for a day and then publish it. But I won't ever really sit on something for too long once I hit that kind of subconscious threshold of, okay, yeah, this feels like my photo or my video.
Yeah. And sometimes when I write like in a poetic form, obviously matching the rules and stuff, but I could go back a year later and rework the similes or the metaphors or some some things like that. Sometimes like I'll post a past blog on a day and just 2 years ago this was, and read through it and go, I could have done this. And in one way, I don't know if creatives, unless you were like total perfectionist, but then you're totally going kind of crazy trying to do like that threshold of when it's done, and a year later, maybe even 2 years later, 3, whatever, and going back and like reworking it. I don't know.
I feel like if you're not in that, like, once you start getting out of the emotional state of what you felt during that writing that poem, or like, for example, my trip to Hawaii, as soon as I, kind of wore off the high of Hawaii, I'm like, okay, I got to get this done because I don't feel the, I don't know how to describe, like the beach vibes or like just the feeling of being in Hawaii. Once that starts to wear off, if your stuff isn't out yet, like for your poems,
part of the creative expression is the emotional state.
Yes, and if you go back and you're like, I'm not in the same emotional state, but I can do this better, I feel like it kind of it makes that emotion less prevalent.
It wouldn't come. It might be technically sound, but it might feel whatever version of the creative expression a little bit stale for the reader.
Yeah.
And part of your so it came to mind. I have iTunes exclusive album, Tears for Fears. I don't know if they even do those anymore, where they used to sit and talk about their songs, and then they would play the song. I don't
like
know.
Your Love for Lyrics podcast.
Yeah. And so they would sometimes sing it and sometimes just, but they had talked to it because this was after they had come back together. They had separated, Andrew and Roland and stuff, and they were talking about, they were in the studio and they were just like, and just messing around. And things weren't going well, and then all of a sudden they hit, I can't remember if he said a chord or a lyric or something. He's like, oh, that's Tears for Fears, and not their own individual, like, even as creatives together, like, that is a Tears for Fears sound, that is a lyric or whatever that they talked about. And when you mentioned it, was like, I think all creatives kind of have that gauge, especially as they move and find their own real voice and stuff, that they know that it's ready to hit publish or to put out into the world or such like that. It's just interesting, like, because I I'm a fan of Tears for Fears, and I remember he's just like, yeah, that's, as a group, as two creatives together, it was kind of cool. And
yeah, and I think an important part to remember about that is whether it's your style or whatever feels like your work evolves in a different
It does
way.
evolve. I was just thinking about it because because I have a deadline to the Friday battle poem.
Oh, yep.
On Twitter. So I did something different again, and I've been doing some things differently. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, I no longer. I don't know why. If you remember, because I blogged about the ode to the old man gardening during the pandemic, that poem, and I used to have a lot of those kind of poems where I would address it to the people. And I haven't done that in a while. Like, I've seen situations and something like, ooh, this would kind of make, but I can't write them right now. Like, I just can't write that style of poem, and I'm not sure why, because I still get inspired by that moment of a viewer looking, at a situation. But it just doesn't, it doesn't come out on paper. Like, I've got notes. Because I in the park I saw an older brother and a younger brother playing, and they were, and I've got these notes, but I just, like, for whatever reason at this moment, which is why I think the question is deeper in regards of that a creative piece is also a record of the moment, of whatever emotion, mental state, even worldly things and stuff. And sometimes I think, if we redo that, we've already talked about the emotion. I don't think you also don't capture that, like, that timestamp, I guess, of what was all going on.
Right.
So I still think you shouldn't, but knowing in all real world, because it's still, creativity is such a fluid. It is kind of a fluid thing because we as creatives grow and change, and sometimes don't have the chance to do what we wanted, whether it's a deadline sometimes.
Yep.
With that. So what's your hard answer then?
My hard answer is no. With a soft yes. Like,
Yeah, I would.
No public, like, debate. I just got back from spring state events, and it was the first time we did venue videos for baseball. Had a 36 hour turnaround time. There were things in that video that I really wanted to put in, but I just got back from track, and I still had to do the graphics on top of it, and it was already 7 p.m., and I had to get them by 8 p.m. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And so when I look at that, I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool to go back and put in those things that I wanted to.
But you can't. Historically, it's done.
Right. And those videos played, people saw them, whatever.
Yeah.
So in a way, I kind of want to do that, but at the same time I don't, because you know what, that was what the video was, and whether it was perfect or not, it wasn't, but that's what it was, and that's it. I'll be able to go look back and be like, yeah, I remember that moment. I remember. I'll have to tell you about my diet this week after podcast, but I remember eating all those chocolate bars and stuff, and like that moment is enclosed in the fact that I had to get those videos done and don't go back and like re-edit and be like, hey, here's the video. And same with, like, I always look at I critique my landscape photos the hardest, because those are the ones that I like the
yes,
most.
The one that you...
And so I'll look at these photos from time to time and be like, should have edited these oranges differently or whatever, but I'm like, you know what, when I was editing those, it takes me back, and whether I like the edit or not now, I can still remember the emotion of taking and editing that photo, and I remember the look that I was trying to convey, whether I executed well or not. And I feel like as soon as you go back and touch that work again, in terms of whether it's technicality-wise improving it, or just I just want to try something different. I feel like it just takes away that, like you said, that timestamp. And I feel like you just have a more full and engaging memory of leaving that.
Because even the things you wish you would have done spark that memory too.
Yeah, the emotions that you had.
And so, I give the soft yes also, because, again, creative aspects is part, but...
Yeah, and so remembering that it evolves. Just because you didn't do something right or didn't do something that's your style now back then doesn't mean that work was bad or not up to par. Even if it's not up to your standard now, it might have been back then.
Yeah.
So those are things to kind of keep in mind. And again, with creativity, you don't always have to go back and play with your old work. Just go make some new stuff.
Yep.
Like, just go create other stuff and convey that new emotion. And then, because you're probably going to look at that in a year and be like, oh, I could have done this different, all that stuff. So that's kind of the if you're having that itch, I feel like just go make something new with that.
There you go.
You can never take enough photos. You can. But, yeah.
All right.
So no with a soft yes. That's the most diplomatic answer that we can give. That's a political answer right there. Let me answer that by asking you this.
Wait, I'm not taking any questions today.
Brian Regan, definitely. Okay, so that was episode 6, season 6, episode 5 of The Creative Moment.
Yep.
Diplomatic answers, as always. We're bringing the heat with this podcast. Follow along. We're on YouTube, Spotify, all the places, Apple Podcasts. If you haven't watched our previous episodes, we now covered a vast variety of topics. So if you have kind of a question or an opinion, just scroll through our library, see if you can find it if we've talked about that. And if we haven't, we're on Twitter and Instagram, all the places, or comment on our videos, and we'll discuss that. So without further ado, Season 6, Episode 5. Thank you guys all for watching and supporting as always, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.